Okay, our third method of conducting an election is the Borda count method. This involves assigning points based on vote place and then seeing who has the most points at the end of the election. So we need to come up with a point count for each of the four candidates. So I'm going to start with Gateway again, and I always start at the bottom because it's the last place vote that's worth 1 point. So we need to see how many last place votes Gateway had. Well, these 30 people voted Gateway last, as did these 29, as did these 14. So together that's 73 people who voted them last. So each of those 73 votes is worth 1 point. Then in the third place, or you go up one row, we had 26 people who put Gateway there. So those votes are worth 2 points. Up one more, nobody put Gateway there. So those votes would have been worth 3. And then we have at the top, we had 43 people who voted Gateway first, and those votes are all worth 4 points each. So we'll total that up and come to a total of 297. Then we do the same thing with Mac, Compact, and Dill. So Mac, there were 26 people who voted them last place, 1 point each. There were 29 and 14, which is 43 people whose votes were worth 2 points each. 43 people in that line, each of those worth 3 points. And in the top line, 30 people, each of those worth 4, for a grand total of 361 points. Compact, nobody put them in last place. There were 43 and 30, so 73 people in third place. 26 and 14, or 40 people with 3 points each, and 29 people in the top row. So if we multiply those and add them together, we get 382. And then lastly, Dell, 43 people, put them in last place. Nobody in third place. 29 and 26. 30 and 29 for 59 people in second place. And at the top, we had 26 and 14, so 40 people, which gives us 380. So what you should notice in each one of these rows is that the point values ascend from 1, 2, 3 to 4 in each row. And so if you can just work your way up from the bottom with each candidate, you can systematically make sure you've covered everything. And so now we're looking for the greatest point total, which is right here, 382, and that was the line for Compact. So Compact wins the election if we use the Borda count method. The last method of conducting an election that we'll look at is the Pairwise Comparison method. There's a formula in your text that tells you how many comparisons you will need to make based on the number of candidates. It says that the number of comparisons is n times n minus 1 divided by 2, where n is the number of candidates. We have 4 candidates, so we have 4 times 3 divided by 2, which is 6. So there will be 6 total comparisons that we need to make. The way I like to do it to make sure I get them all is just pick one of the letters to start with, for instance, G. So we can compare G to M, G to C, and G to D. So now I've compared Gateway to each of the other 3. Now start with M and compare it to C and also to D. And then the only comparison left is to take C and compare it to D. And that's our 6 comparisons. Remember, G to M is the same thing as M to G. Okay, now when we're doing pairwise comparison, we're pretending that the 2 candidates we're comparing are the only 2 candidates in the race. So when we compare Gateway to Mac, we're going to go column by column and see how many people prefer Gateway to Mac if they're the only 2 candidates in the race. So all we care about are G's and M's for right now. So you see the first column here, these 43 people like Gateway better than Mac. In the second column, Gateway is below Mac, so these 30 people actually prefer Mac to Gateway. And we do that column by column. So it's easiest usually to pick one letter and just look at that one. Which columns have G higher than M? Well, the first column and the fourth column. These are the only two columns that have G ranked higher than M. So if we add the 43 people here and the 26 people here, we get 69 people preferred G to M. And how many people preferred M over G? Well, it's the other three columns. So you can either add up those three columns or recall that there were 142 total voters. So subtract 69 from 142 and you will get 73. So more people preferred Mac to Gateway if they were the only two candidates in the race. So Mac wins the comparison. Then we look Gateway to Compact. First column, Gateway's preferred. And in no other column is G ranked higher than C except for the first column. So only 43 people like G better than C. It means all the other columns preferred C over G, and so if you subtract that from 142, we get 99, and C wins the comparison. G to D, first column, G is preferred better than D, but not on any of the other columns, so that's also 43 to 99. D wins the comparison. Now we're comparing M to C. So first column, M is higher than C, so is the second, but not the others. 43 and 30 gives us 73. If we subtract that from 142, we get 69. 73 people or more than 69 people, so M wins. M to D, first column, second column, and no other columns, so that's also 73 to 69. M wins the comparison. And then lastly, C to D, first column, third column, that's it. So first and third like C better than D, so 43 and 29 is 72. And subtract that from 142 and you get 70, which means C wins the comparison. Now nobody tied. If they had tied, we would have had to awarded a point to both people, or excuse me, half a point to both people. But each circle value here is one comparison 1. So if we look at how many comparisons M1, C1, D1, and G1, M1, 1, 2, 3, C1, 2, D1, 1, and G1, 0. And if you add these three numbers up, you get to 6, which is what your point totals will have to add up to in pairwise comparison. They have to add up to the number of comparisons. So most points wins, which means M or Mac wins the election. So we have now had 4 different ways to conduct this election, and we came out with 4 different winners. So you can see that it's obviously very important to decide on your method of election before you actually conduct the election. You can't decide which method you want to use once you know the outcome, once you know the particular votes, in order to be a fair election. So I hope that better explains the 4 different methods of elections.